My brother stole my clients while I worked 70-hour weeks, so I quietly took back everything and left him facing ruin he never saw coming. I'm a 29-year-old guy, and for years, I worked 70-hour weeks building the small marketing agency my brother and I started from nothing. It began in my cramped apartment, 2 old laptops, a flickering desk lamp, and an absurd dream that we could somehow compete with the big firms downtown. I remember nights where I'd fall asleep at my desk, my face pressed against half-finished proposals, the hum of my computer fan becoming the soundtrack of my life. Coffee replaced sleep. My phone became an alarm clock, not a lifeline. But I didn't care, because I believed in what we were building. Ryan was the opposite of me, effortlessly charming, the kind of guy people instantly trusted. He had this smile that could close deals faster than any pitch deck I could design. Clients loved him. My job was the back end, strategy, analytics, and making sure everything we promised actually worked. He was the face, I was the foundation. It worked at least for a while, but I started noticing little things. He'd miss deadlines, showing up late with a joke and a shrug. He'd take calls I'd scheduled, but I'd never see the follow-up notes. When clients praised our results, he'd accept it like it was all him. "I've been working hard on this one," he'd say, and I'd just stand there, smiling tightly, swallowing irritation like bitter medicine. Still, I told myself it didn't matter. We were brothers. Family doesn't keep score, right? When our first major client renewed for another year, I thought, this is it. All the sacrifices, all the lost sleep. It's finally paying off. I didn't know then that the foundation I built would soon become the weapon he'd use to bury me. But at that moment, all I felt was pride and trust. Blind, hopeful trust. The first few years were chaos, a blur of projects, deadlines, and caffeine. But when the dust settled, we'd done it. Our agency finally had traction. Clients started pouring in. Our revenue doubled, and for the first time, I could breathe. I'd glance at our small office, the faint hum of computers, the smell of burnt coffee, the sound of keyboards clacking late into the night, and think, we built this. Ryan started dressing sharper, speaking smoother, and calling himself co-founder and lead strategist. I didn't mind. He was good at playing the face. While I wrote campaign scripts at 2 a.m., he was at business dinners, shaking hands and laughing with people I'd never met. He'd say things like, "You don't need to worry about networking, man. I've got it covered." And I wanted to believe him. I really did. But slowly, things started to feel off. Clients who used to CC both of us began emailing Ryan directly. He'd forward the messages days later, saying, "Oh, they just had a quick question." Sometimes he'd show up to meetings without me, saying it was simpler this way. I brushed it off, assuming it was just efficiency, until one afternoon. A client called me and asked, "Hey, are you still part of the team?" The words punched me in the gut. I laughed it off, pretending it was a misunderstanding. But that night, I couldn't focus on anything. My code blurred, my hands shook, and for the first time, I wondered if my brother wasn't just stepping up, but stepping over me. Still, I pushed the thought away. Paranoia wouldn't help. We were finally thriving. And I wasn't about to ruin it by doubting my own blood, but some cracks don't stay invisible for long. They widen until the whole structure gives way. It started with a single invoice. I was doing my usual late-night bookkeeping. Numbers had always been my comfort zone, the one thing that never lied. But something caught my eye. A major client payment that should have hit our joint account hadn't arrived. Confused, I double-checked the logs. The payment had gone through, just not to our account. It went to a different one, under Ryan's name. The next morning, I confronted him, trying to stay calm. "Hey man, this invoice, it went to your personal account. Any idea why?" He didn't even flinch. "Oh yeah," he said casually, scrolling through his phone. "Just handling some tax stuff separately. My accountant said it's cleaner that way. Don't worry about it." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But something in his tone, that effortless nonchalance, didn't sit right. Still, I told myself it was fine. We'd always divided responsibilities differently. He'd manage people. I'd manage systems. But the seed of doubt was planted. Over the next few weeks, Ryan began expanding. He attended exclusive networking events without inviting me, created side email threads with clients, and insisted he was streamlining communication. I noticed his new laptop top of the line and the sudden luxury watch he wore to meetings. Then one night, as I was working on campaign analytics, I opened a shared drive and noticed duplicates of our client folders, but labeled differently. Files I'd spent months perfecting had been renamed under a new brand I'd never heard of. I stared at the screen, a chill running through me. Why would Ryan need duplicates? Unless that thought froze me. I didn't want to finish it. Not yet. Because once I did, there'd be no going back. A few weeks later, things started unraveling faster than I could process. Clients who had been with us for years suddenly stopped responding to my emails. At first I blamed myself. Maybe I'd been too blunt. Maybe the campaigns hadn't performed as well as I thought. But then, one morning, I logged into our CRM and saw that several contracts were marked closed, not lost, not pending, but transferred. Transferred to what? Or rather, to who? I dug deeper, and that's when I saw it. A new agency name popping up in client correspondence, Ryder Creative. I froze. Ryder, my brother's last name. At first I thought it was a coincidence. Maybe he'd partnered with someone on the side. Maybe he'd planned to loop me in later. But when I opened one of the attached proposals, I felt my stomach drop. The pitch deck was mine. The same graphics, the same taglines, the same data I'd personally built. Only this time my name wasn't anywhere on it. I confronted him that night. Ryan, what's Ryder Creative? He didn't even blink. Oh, that? Just a test project. Chill, bro. You're overthinking it. His tone was too casual, too polished. My instincts screamed that he was lying, but I didn't have enough proof yet. I wanted to believe this was still salvageable, that maybe he just made a mistake. But when another longtime client emailed me saying, "Hey, we've decided to move forward with Ryan's team directly," I knew. He wasn't testing anything. He was replacing me. The agency I'd built from scratch was bleeding out, not from competition, not from failure, but from the one person I thought I could trust most. And I had no idea that this was only the beginning of what he was about to take from me. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw our company logo, the one I designed, printed under his new name. Rage built inside me until it was impossible to contain. By morning, I was standing outside Ryan's condo, fists clenched, heart hammering so hard it hurt Dot. When he opened the door, he looked surprised, but not guilty, just annoyed. "Bro, what are you doing here at 7 a.m.?" he asked, brushing crumbs off his designer hoodie. I stepped inside without asking. "Don't play dumb, Ryan. I know about Ryder Creative. You've been moving clients, taking payments, using my work. You're stealing from me." He laughed, actually laughed. "Stealing, please. You handled the back end. I handled relationships. Those clients came with me because they wanted me. You wouldn't even have them if it wasn't for my charm." That line hit like a slap. I'd spent years breaking my back to keep those accounts afloat, rewriting campaigns at midnight, fixing his half-finished proposals, covering for his missed calls. But in his mind, I was just the support system, the invisible gear keeping his spotlight turning. Our argument spiraled fast. He called me ungrateful, said I was too emotional for business. When I mentioned lawyers, he smirked. "You really think anyone's gonna side with you? I'm the one clients know. You're just the guy behind the curtain." That broke something in me. I stormed out, shaking, but not from anger, from realization. He wasn't just lying to clients. He'd rewritten the narrative entirely. And worst of all, my parents believed him. When I tried explaining what happened, my mom said softly, "Maybe you're just jealous, honey." Ryan's always been good with people. That was the moment I realized I'd lost everything: my business, my reputation, and my family's trust. But he had no idea what I was capable of rebuilding in silence. The weeks that followed were hell. My inbox was a graveyard: empty threads, canceled contracts, polite "we've decided to go another direction" emails. My calendar, once packed with back-to-back client calls, now sat blank. I spent my mornings staring at the screen, scrolling through old messages, rereading every line to see where things had gone wrong. The company I'd bled for was gone, and Ryan, he was thriving. I'd see his face pop up on local business pages: Ryder Creative wins, major client contract. His smiling photo under headlines that used to have our name. My friends sent screenshots with awkward texts like, "Did you see this?" I'd pretend it didn't bother me. But it did. It crushed me. My savings evaporated fast. Rent, bills, the silent humiliation of knowing my brother was out there celebrating the empire he'd stolen. Even my parents called less, their tone different, cautious, like I was the unstable one. "You should be proud of Ryan," my mom said once. "He's keeping the family name alive." I wanted to scream, "I built that name." But what good would it do? No one was listening. Nights became the worst. I'd sit in the dark, surrounded by empty coffee cups, staring at the wall where our first agency certificate used to hang. Now it was just an empty nail. Mocking me, I stopped answering calls. I stopped trying to fight. There was no point. He had taken everything. My work, my credibility, my identity. But sometimes rock bottom isn't the end. It's the quiet before something new breaks through. Because in that silence, I stumbled on something buried, deep in our old shared folders that would change everything. And for the first time in months, I felt that flicker again, not of hope, but of strategy. It happened by accident. One sleepless night, I opened our old company drive, a place I hadn't touched since Ryan cut me out. I was half scrolling out of nostalgia, half torturing myself. But then I noticed a hidden folder buried deep inside the client archive. Section 1, Ryan had labeled simply archive_2. Curious, I clicked it open. What I saw made my blood run cold. It wasn't just old projects. It was full campaign strategies, creative decks, performance reports, all the intellectual property I'd created, but rebranded under Writer Creative's name. He'd copied everything, down to the metrics, the code snippets, the ad structures, even the templates. Every stolen client, every stolen paycheck, they were all built on my work. My first instinct was rage, pure and blinding. I almost smashed my keyboard. But then something else kicked in, clarity. If I exploded, he'd win again. But if I stayed quiet, I could document everything. So I started saving files, screenshots, metadata, date stamps. I cataloged everything Ryan had stolen. I spent days doing this, not eating properly, barely sleeping, but driven by something sharper than anger, purpose. Then I reached out to a lawyer, a quiet, meticulous man named Patel, who'd handled digital copyright cases before. I showed him everything. He didn't say much, just nodded and said, "You have a case, a strong one, but don't rush it." That night I sat alone, the faint hum of my computer filling the room, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront Ryan again. I wasn't going to beg or shout or try to convince anyone. I'd let him keep building his empire while I prepared to burn the ground beneath it, because sometimes the best revenge doesn't come loud. It comes patient, precise, and inevitable. From that moment, my life became methodical. I stopped mourning and started moving. By day, I freelanced quietly under a new name. No LinkedIn, no profile photo, no mention of my past. Just results. I reached out to small businesses, startups, even solo entrepreneurs who couldn't afford agencies like Writer Creative. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. At night, I tracked Ryan's every move. I joined industry newsletters, watched his press releases, followed his clients' updates. My old work was everywhere. The same graphics, the same ad language, the same formulas I'd built through endless nights. He hadn't even bothered to change the structure. He was lazy in his arrogance, and that made him predictable. I kept collecting evidence, client testimonials he reused, projects that mirrored mine line for line, timestamps that connected every stolen file back to me. Patel, my lawyer, called it an airtight chain. But he also warned, don't make noise yet. The more rope you give him, the tighter it'll hang. So I stayed quiet. I smiled when mutual acquaintances mentioned Ryan's success. Yeah, he's really doing well, I'd say. Sipping my coffee while mentally filing away each new brag as future ammunition, then something unexpected happened. One of my oldest clients, someone I thought was gone for good, reached out. "Hey," she said, "I left Writer Creative. Something felt off. You were the real brain, weren't you?" That line hit deep. It wasn't validation, it was ignition, because it meant the truth was starting to leak. So I helped her. And another client after that, and another. Slowly, my quiet little freelance alias started pulling business from under his nose. He didn't know it yet, but I was building something new, right beneath the ashes he left behind. And this time, I wasn't building it for us. A few months later, I got wind of Ryan's next big move, a multi-million-dollar pitch with a national corporation. It was the kind of contract that could cement his place as a major player in the industry. His social media was flooded with teasers. Big things coming soon. Next chapter begins. I almost scrolled past it. Until I saw the presentation preview, he posted a familiar shade of blue, a layout I'd designed. Even the tagline I wrote 2 years ago. He was doing it again, selling my work under his name. But this time, to a company big enough to notice. I called Patel immediately. "He's reusing our copyrighted material," I said, my voice steady but shaking inside. "Good," Patel replied simply. "Then it's time." That night, I drafted an anonymous email to the corporation's legal department. No threats, no emotion. Just the evidence side-by-side comparisons of Ryan's proposal and my original files, with timestamps, metadata, and proof of authorship. I signed it only as a concerned party. The next week, the explosion hit. Ryan walked into that pitch, confident, probably rehearsed his charm in the mirror, but instead of shaking hands, he walked into a wall of lawyers. The corporation had cross-referenced every file and found plagiarism in nearly every slide. They didn't just pull out of the deal, they filed a formal complaint. Within 48 hours, the story leaked. Industry blogs picked it up. Writer Creative accused of copyright theft. Clients started pulling their contracts, and social media turned vicious. I sat at my desk, watching it unfold. The soft glow of my monitor lighting the smirk I couldn't suppress. For the first time in years, I didn't feel powerless. I felt precise. And the best part? No one knew it was me. Not yet. The fallout was swift and brutal. Within a week, half of Ryan's clients terminated their contracts. The ones that stayed demanded transparency he couldn't provide. His PR manager quit mid-campaign. Lawsuits started circling. And through it all, Ryan went silent, the confident. Untouchable brother who once mocked my caution was now disappearing from the spotlight he craved so much. I didn't celebrate, not outwardly. But every headline that hit Writer Creative facing legal inquiry, clients cut ties after plagiarism scandal, was a small, quiet exhale of justice. Still, I wasn't done. Behind the scenes, I'd been rebuilding not just my reputation, but a brand under my own name. The clients I'd helped in secret started referring others. My calendar filled again, not with handshakes and empty promises, but with people who respected results. I kept everything clean, ethical, transparent, a complete mirror of the mess Ryan had made. Then, one night, my phone buzzed. It was him. "Hey," the message read. "Can we talk?" I stared at it for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Another part wanted to unleash every ounce of anger he deserved. But I replied with just 3 words. "What about Ryan?" He called immediately. His voice was hollow, defeated. "I don't know what happened, man. Everything's falling apart. The clients, the money, I'm losing it all. Please, if you know anything," I cut him off. "You taught me everything I needed to destroy you." My tone was calm. No yelling, no satisfaction. Just truth. He went silent. I could almost hear his breath catch, realization settling in. Then the line went dead. And for the first time, the silence between us wasn't heavy with guilt. It was filled with balance because, finally, he was the one left cleaning up the mess he made. The weeks that followed felt strangely peaceful. The calm after a years-long storm. I didn't check the headlines anymore. I didn't have to. Word traveled fast enough. Ryan's company was under investigation for breach of contract, copyright infringement, and unpaid taxes that had slipped through in the chaos. He'd built his empire on stolen bricks. And now every one of them was being ripped out from under him. One evening, I got a call from our parents. My mother's voice trembled. "Ryan's in trouble. He might lose everything. Can't you just forgive him? Your brothers." I stared at the floor, my jaw tightening. Forgive him? I'd spent years sacrificing my health, my future, my dignity, all so he could smile for cameras and pretend he'd done it all alone. "Mom," I said quietly, "he didn't just take money. He took me." A few days later, Ryan showed up at my office. He looked nothing like the man he used to be. Eyes sunken, clothes wrinkled, arrogance replaced by fear. He didn't even sit down. "I messed up," he whispered. "I just wanted to prove I could make it without you. I didn't think it'd go this far." For a long time, I said nothing. The room was silent except for the faint buzz of my computer. Finally, I looked at him and said, "You didn't have to prove anything. You just had to be honest." He begged for help, for connections, for advice, for a way out. But I couldn't do it. Not again. I'd already rebuilt myself once. Helping him now would mean undoing everything I'd learned. So I stood, opened the door, and said quietly, "You burned the bridge. Ryan, I just watched it fall." And this time, I didn't look back. A year passed, and life found its rhythm again. Not loud, not flashy, just steady. My business was thriving under my own name now, built on the same principles I'd always believed in: honesty, hard work, and loyalty. Every client I took on, every campaign I designed, carried that silent promise to myself: never again will someone take what I built. I still heard about Ryan sometimes. He tried starting over under a different name, but word in the industry spread faster than any ad campaign. His reputation was poisoned by his own greed. The last I heard, he was working freelance gigs, struggling to pay off legal debts, living in a small rented apartment. There were nights I'd think about everything that happened, the late hours, the betrayal, the silence that followed. I'd sit in my office, the same one where I rebuilt my future, and realized that revenge wasn't the satisfaction I thought it would be. It wasn't the destruction of Ryan that healed me. It was the reclamation of myself. One afternoon, I got a message from an old client. "You've come a long way," she said. "You deserve it." That line stayed with me, because she was right. I had, not just professionally, but emotionally. I'd learned that closure doesn't always come from payback. Sometimes it's just knowing you survived what was meant to break you. I visited our old office once, out of curiosity. The building was empty, the sign long gone. But when I stood there, I didn't feel anger anymore, just peace. I'd finally built something Ryan could never steal again. As I locked up and walked away, I thought to myself, he took everything I built, so I built something he could never touch, myself. And that, more than revenge, was the real victory.